Well, hello, and thank you for joining us today for the Leveraging Customer Portals webinar and live stream event. My name is Delaney McKinley, and I'm Executive Vice President of Operations at the Michigan Manufacturers Association. MMA serves as a unifying champion of Michigan's manufacturing industry, the most diverse manufacturing center in the entire world. We represent nearly 1,800 members, ranging from small mom and pop shops to the world's largest and most iconic corporations. We strive to bring valuable resources to our members in efforts to amplify their stories, protect their bottom lines, and propel the industry as a whole forward. And we know that our members are committed to continuous improvement and innovation. So I'm particularly excited about today's topic and the experts that we have joining us. And they'll be offering insight into how you can reduce operational costs and improve service delivery through customer portals. Whether you're just starting to explore this technology or you're looking to optimize your existing solutions, this webinar will provide practical advice. So today, we are joined by Jonathan Hodges, VP of Technology at Classy Llama. Jonathan is an experienced lead software engineer with a proven track record in the internet industry. He's skilled in web applications, PHP, e-commerce, and JavaScript. Jonathan has successfully formed and led teams, introduced agile methodologies into organizations, and has extensive experience in business organization and optimization. We're also joined by Tate Harpster, solutions architect with Classy Llama. Tate is a BigCommerce certified with extensive experience in problem solving and integration, recommendation, and scope creation for complex website builds on the B2B and B2C fronts. Lance Owide is General Manager, B2B with BigCommerce. Lance is an experienced founder with 8 years driving growth through innovation and solution development in the finance and fintech industries. And last, but certainly not least, is Kurt Theobald, CEO of Classy Llama. Kurt has been with Classy since the very beginning, 17 years ago. He led the company through significant growth in that time, from a two-person startup to a sought-out agency in the e-commerce and digital transformation space. His pursuit of exceptional company culture and excellence have been instrumental in leading the company to where it is today. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Kurt.
Thanks, Delaney. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to have you today. And for those of you who are watching after the show, we're glad to have you viewing as well. We're just going to set the stage in talking about customer portals today by stepping back and talking about where we at in the current B2B sales landscape. And to do that, I'll pass that up to you, Owide, if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, sure, of course. B2B is in an interesting space right now, manufacturing in particular. We are seeing a huge movement into online, not just sales, but online servicing. And what do we mean by that, right? Interactions that would always happen belly to belly, as my boss likes to say, in person, are moving online. And that's not to say that those interactions and those relationships that are being built are being replaced by online. Definitely not. But they're being improved by an online experience that allows customers to self-serve a lot of the processes, the use cases, the interactions that would previously have been a time suck for an operations team or a time suck for a sales team. If you look at the data out there, you look at Forrester, about 17% of manufacturing transactions today occur online. That's actually about in line with where B2C is. Consumers shop about that same rate online. If you look out to sort of 2023 and 2030, where those projections end, it's actually around 40%. So a huge movement online. And that's happening because that B2B buyer, they want to be able to shop online. They want to be able to follow up with service requests and warranties and support online and not have to always pick up that phone. And that's great for the buyer, but it's also great for manufacturers, right? Whose sales teams today are bogged down with manual data entry, manual order entry, answering questions about where's my shipment, where's my order, and for the operations team who can start to streamline some of those processes online. So that's really kind of where I think we're at today with the sales process for manufacturers, and how we're seeing some of that move online in just a couple of minutes summary there.
Appreciate that, Lance, and I think that underscores one of the challenges in play right now in this transition and this embrace of digital transformation technology in general is harnessing the things that only humans can do while also engaging with the things that technology enables. And I wonder, Tate, I was curious if you could speak to when we step back and look at digital transformation as it applies to B2B sales in general, what's the importance there? What is it supposed to do, and what can't it replace?
Yeah, good question. I think, Lance kind of touched on this idea that in B2B sales, there's this increasingly large movement towards online purchasing. I think that's one of the most key components, but there's also the speed at which you can move in a market through something like a B2B portal, or really just online sales in general, that people are, in my experience, businesses are latching on to that value, right, of being able to increase the efficiency of management of orders or shipments coming into their business, being able to get orders out, providing customers with a lot of transparency in terms of where their orders are at or what progress they're making on a particular order. These things are all made possible through a customer portal, buyer portal, B2B portal. There's a lot of different labels that we like to put on that. But some of the key benefits from a customer perspective would be the clarity and transparency and trust that gets developed when you have real, live, instant data that you can log into and view and manage. And from the business side, you're creating these huge efficiencies, both for your sales teams, for all of your fulfillment operations. That entire process is able to move through those channels a lot quicker. So those are some of the key benefits that we're seeing being implemented with these portals.
And I think we also have a situation where it's easy to forget that a lot of these people inside businesses are also consumers. They have that same experience shopping on all of their major retailers that they work with, and that they purchase things for their own personal benefit, and they've come to expect them.
Yeah.
And so it's almost become at this point where lacking that insight and that visibility feels like you've taken a step back.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've seen that with a number of businesses. It's funny because they come to us exactly that notion of, I want to have my customers receive the same buying experience that I do when I'm shopping online, which is, that makes sense. And I think that's the direction the market's moving. So,
yeah. So, and today we're talking specifically about customer portals, but there's so many benefits that digital transformation makes available on the B2B sales channel, and so many of them are counterparts to the B2C side of things. But I think that there has been a general misperception and resistance in the market from the B2B side of thinking e-commerce is something that belongs over in the B2C side of things. And we hear it all the time. We've been hearing it for years that this is being adopted and it's being demanded by people on the B2B side of the house. And yet there is this resistance. So we talk about customer portals because it's like the starting point, in my mind, of giving B2B buyers access to the benefits of e-commerce, which I almost am slow to call it that. Call it digital commerce, whatever you want to call it. It's giving them the core benefits of that. So let's just step back. I would just want to lay groundwork. Let's define, what do we mean when we're talking about a customer portal if it's a new concept for some of our viewers? Who wants to take that?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to. Lance, feel free to add to this as well. But if I were to try to explain what is that concept, we're talking specifically B2B, and so I actually used to be a procurement manager for a manufacturing company. So that was literally my job, was buy from other businesses the resources we need to produce the products that we sell. The ways that a portal helped me do that job and kind of how it assimilates all of the different aspects of somebody that might be a procurement manager for a company. Within the portal, I can log into a vendor of mine that I buy resources from regularly. I can manage all of the current orders I have. I can create new orders. I can keep a list of all of the products that I know I'm going to regularly buy in one list, and I can put that on a reoccurring basis. Those are just some examples of things I would be able to do within a portal. And it's kind of like your one-stop shop for that company to be able to manage all of the different aspects of transactions that you might be doing with that business. So it's essentially the same thing as an e-commerce experience, but consolidating all of those feature sets in a one-stop shop kind of functionality that enables businesses to be more efficient.
And I think about things like documentation around the products that are purchased, around the user manual, the installation guide, warranty registration, things like that can be now enabled that are often very clunky outside of a digital context. Those kinds of things are accelerated and made so accessible through a digital platform like a customer portal. Now, I know, Lance, you guys just recently had a partner conference at BigCommerce. We had a number of our folks there in Austin. And I heard really good things about your roadmap for B2B. I'm curious, what does the customer portal look like within a BigCommerce context? Can you speak to that? How are you guys supporting that kind of engagement and creating those efficiencies on the BigCommerce platform?
Yeah, of course. And I think there's something I'll add as well on the sort of B2C-like buyer journey. Buyers saying, I want to shop like it's Amazon. And I speak with manufacturers all day, and the manufacturer response is, my sales process is nothing like Amazon. I don't want it to be B2C-like, because B2C is not how we sell, and I couldn't agree more with that. What we're doing is by creating these buyer portals and by creating online processes. It's not just buying; it's across the entire buyer life cycle, not just the purchase, but to servicing and warranties and everything else. We're creating more efficiency, like we get on B2C, but we're not creating B2C-like experiences. And I think that's really important, because I speak to lots of manufacturers who sort of get turned off when we say B2C-like experience. I'm not Amazon, and it's not going to ever look like Amazon. So what is that buyer portal experience? What is it? Well, actually taking a tiny step back, for lots of manufacturers, the buyer portal can be step two. The first step can often be, I just want to get products online. I just want to get my catalog online so that I'm discoverable. I'm discoverable across multiple geographies, potentially, where today I'm not. I just have a book and a sales team. And we're now going to start selling online. And then I start taking maybe quote requests online as that top of funnel that I've created through my website. And then step two, and we often call it crawl, walk, run. And I know we're going to talk about how should you think about implementation. But step two can often be that buyer portal. So what does that really mean? Well, for me, it means kind of two things. One is, regardless of the channel you transact through, and you'll transact through lots of channels, through your sales team, through EDI, in a warehouse, many more, email, text, potentially. Regardless of that channel, that order is visible online, it's returnable, trackable online. And then the second piece is about that entire buyer workflow, that entire life cycle. So how do I onboard a customer, right? A new customer hits my site and they want to start transacting with me. How do I onboard this new distributor? Right? How can I automate that process? How can I automate their approval of terms, the credit terms they're going to purchase on? Then once they're placing orders, how do I start to automate the process of support, of warranties, of servicing that product, and move that online so that becomes a more streamlined process? And at BigCommerce, we've built a lot of those processes into what we call our buyer portal. We went for buyer portal rather than customer portal. But out of the box, we can support things that we'll mention there in the room, like approval workflows, like quoting, like invoice payments, like creating those lists and sharing them across your company, right? You've got a list of products that your customers are purchasing every week. Well, just create a simple list that's going to be shared and then easily reordered. And we sort of package that into an out-of-the-box, ready-to-go portal that can be deployed with very little customization.
You mentioned how B2B is very different than the B2C side, which I think is very important, because I also think about things like complex permissions that are completely irrelevant to the B2C side of the equation. But you have complex organizations with buying permissions and spending limits and approval processes. And these are all things that are completely foreign to the B2C side, but they've got to be enabled by the B2B. And those are the kinds of things that you guys are doing at BigCommerce to support the B2B experience.
Yeah, exactly like you said. I think one of the analysts, it might have been Gartner, have a fantastic slide where they show the average B2B purchase, manufacturing purchase, takes 8 approvals before that order is actually placed. Well, how are those approvals happening today? Often they're offline, they're in emails back and forth. As you move that online, that buyer becomes stickier, right? They are now spending longer on your site because they're going through those approval workflows online. They can see the credit that they have with you as a manufacturer. They can track their invoices, pay them down. That process of purchasing is so different, like you quite rightly said there. It's so different for B2B than B2C. And the more of that process, not just purchasing, but across the entire life cycle of the product and of that buyer, the more of that you can move online, automate, make self-serve, you start to realize some of those efficiencies, right? Operational efficiencies, customer improvement efficiencies. The customer is going to be happier. NPS, your promoter score starts to improve. Your share of wallet is going to increase as these customers prefer purchasing from you, and your sales team, they get the most benefit because they're freed up from a lot of that manual data entry, answering of the phones of where is an order, where's a package, hey, can I get this discount? Well, that discount should be reflected online. And when it is, your sales team can then focus on real value add, right? Upsell, cross-sell for you, and value add to the customer, right? Answering detailed questions about new products, about how, different products and how they can choose the right product to purchase. So yeah, and we've taken a lot of those learnings, a lot of those often offline processes, and built them ready into what we call as I said, our buyer portal, so that manufacturers don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to a quote and how that should be handled, or that approval workflow, or creating that list.
We naturally we've been talking about some of the benefits that customer portals represent to the different participants, the different people that are using it or being influenced by it. I'd like to actually drill down and talk about the benefits of these customer portals to 3 discrete groups. First, I want to talk about how does it affect the customers that are using it, the ones that are actually doing the buying. How does it support the businesses that are doing the selling? And then specifically, I want to talk about salespeople. Like, how does it actually create value for them? Because again, I think this ends up being a specter of threat to sales organizations and makes it harder to create that adoption that's so important on the organizational side, on the seller side. So let's start with, and we've already talked, we'll repeat ourselves perhaps to some degree, but let's talk about the benefits to the customer, to the one doing the buying. What are the specific gains they get from using a customer portal versus what the traditional sales process?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lance really touched on this pretty perfectly when he's talking about the self-serviceability of a buyer portal. The previous model, let's say, or the SANS, portal model of procurement for a customer is going to look very different and is going to vary across multiple different forms of media, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, some examples of that is, in my job as a procurement manager, I've got to call 6 different companies, find out the SKUs for all of the different pieces of equipment or parts or whatever that is for my manufacturing business, exactly what it is I'm trying to order. I've got to create a PO. I've got to either fax something or email something or send something out to get signed. I've got to deal with the shipping. I've got to give them all of my shipping info every time. Mm-hmm. There's so many steps that have to be taken in order to make that one purchase. And oftentimes, like Lance mentioned, there's these complicated approval processes. So now I'm also sending that to 1 million people within my company, trying to get those approvals that I need to get that, that order through.
And oftentimes it's just to get a quote.
Oftentimes it's just to get a quote.
It's not even to place an order, it's just to get a quote.
That's right.
And I think, one of the things I think is so important on the seller side, as I'm thinking about them and thinking about their customers, I think if I as a customer am able to, without talking to anyone, without waiting for someone to call me back, without all that friction, just to get in touch, if I'm able to get clarity around what I want to order, when am I going to get it, be able to place the order, if I can do all of that, I mean, these people are buying lots of things in lots of categories, and the less friction they have in that process, the better they're going to feel. And I would argue that even if they have to spend a little bit more to reduce that friction, to enable them to buy more efficiently, is that they're going to choose the more efficient path.
Absolutely. And one of the main reasons they're going to choose that is timeline. Usually these manufacturing businesses are on tight timelines.
Absolutely.
They need to know when things are coming. They need to be guaranteed that it's going to arrive on a certain day. They're planning around that procurement. And so the more efficient you make that process and the more reliable you make that process, the more that customer is going to return time and time again.
And my hope is, if I'm on the seller side, my hope is, instead of waiting for it to become a problem for my customer because other competitors are now adopting it, I adopt it first before them, and I create a great experience. So I'm the one causing that friction and that pain for other sellers in the same competitive space.
Yeah.
That's my hope. That would be my lean, because that is the eventuality. Is once there is clear data showing a continued growth of expectation and demand for this kind of capability, and so getting ahead of that as best a seller can, I think, is prudent. So let's talk about maybe some of the benefits to the seller side of things. How does this create lift for them, aside from what I already mentioned in terms of competitive advantage, because if it benefits their customers, it's obvious it's going to benefit them. But maybe let's talk about some of the operational benefits from it, some of the efficiencies that they gain from it.
I think one of the biggest ones I've seen in implementations of portals is that the sales teams of these companies have a much easier time getting to that sales qualified lead, particularly when it comes to quoting. Usually that process, just to get the quote out, to get in contact with that customer and to work out a deal, is a long process. And one of the key benefits to a sales team that a portal represents is an immediate gathering of all of that information related to a potential customer, exactly what it is they're looking for, oftentimes automated quote systems. And so now you're working these leads, or you're working with these customers from an initial point of communication where you're so much farther ahead in making that deal than you are without that existence of a portal. It's one of the key efficiencies I see on sales teams.
And Jonathan, I'm curious from your side, what's the management burden or the operational burden without a customer portal versus with?
Yeah, so without a customer portal, there's a lot of phone calls, a lot of lag time. When you have that customer portal, you're able to go in and see all of your orders in a single place. So your fulfillment team can be very focused on working through that technology. So it's kind of both sides of it. You've got the sales side of it, but you also have immediately that comes into a funnel that can be used by operations. They can take that list of items and work through it. They have statuses. They can actually build their processes around, in a lot of cases, these portals. So and these portals are built in such a way that they can be flexible, where you can add additional statuses. You can say, okay, maybe here's the default set of statuses, but we have these extra 4 steps. And as Lance was talking about, one company's process is going to look very different from the next, is going to look very different from the next. And so customer portals are from the ground up designed to be flexible. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It is, in fact, a solution that can be tailored to your unique buying experience. And whether that be the fulfillment process, or whether that be the warranty process, or in some cases it's the build process, which is part of fulfillment, right? But it can be a custom, you're not always buying something that is off the shelf. In a lot of cases, there's a manufacturing process that goes into this. And so you may want to expose the steps of the process that you're at, whether that be in the planning phase, and the design phase, or the manufacturing phase, and how maybe you're even doing it in batches. And so you're communicating which batch is getting built right now, and whether that's been shipped out. It can vary quite widely. And you can use these customer portals both as a communication mechanism to the customer, and in some cases, depending on the complexity of your operation, you may even choose to adopt using it for supporting your internal team through their process. It will at least correlate with your process as a communication mechanism.
Delana, I'm actually curious to hear from you from the Michigan Manufacturers Association's perspective on what is the primary resistance or obstacles to adoption of customer portals. Is it a lack of awareness? Is it a lack of understanding of the benefits of it? Or is it more about just the adoption friction and the difficulties of implementing it and putting it in place and getting your team on board with it?
Well, I suspect that it has something to do with, everything that manufacturers have had to contend with in recent years. I think, what I see within our membership is folks are incredibly busy. They are stretched very thin. There continues to be, a gap in the talent that they need and the folks that they have that are trained with the skills. So you've got, CEOs that are working the line to get, orders out. So I think it's a matter of just drinking from a fire hose and trying to prioritize what are the things that I need to implement. Everyone's trying to innovate. There's a lot of different areas that they need to do that. And I suspect this is on the list. It's just hard to figure out where it is in the priority chain.
It's just difficult to get staffing writ large in general, or is it specifically technical talent they're struggling to get? Because it sounds like if the CEO's on the line helping to fulfill orders, it would be more a general difficulty in staffing.
I think it's both. I think you've got general difficulty, certainly with production careers. There's a shortage there, and that's why manufacturers are investing more heavily in technology on the front lines. But certainly, I think there's a desire to take advantage of all of the technological advancements on every front. But when you're trying to do all of the jobs wearing multiple hats, I think that may be it. I'm not aware of any real resistance or lack of interest in this. I was really encouraged to hear what Lance said, that 17% of manufacturing transactions are taking place online. So manufacturers are definitely there. It's just a matter of being able to ramp up and taking advantage of these opportunities.
That's good. Lance, what are you seeing as resistance points for adoption right now?
Well, yeah, I was just going to call something out there, and I think there was some great points made there by Delaney. We see the same issues, the same pushback, the same concerns. Do I have the skill sets in-house, the required expertise to make this project successful? And that's where you need to find fantastic partners like the three gentlemen that you see sat in the room there from Classy Llama, who have done this before hundreds of times and know exactly how to approach a project, how to structure that project, how to plan for it, and then how to execute incredibly quickly and efficiently and accurately. And so we encourage all of our manufacturers who don't have the development expertise in-house, the technology expertise in-house, to find a great partner, an agency partner, a systems integrator partner who will be able to guide you along that journey, like Classy Llama, because they're fantastic at implementing buyer portals, at implementing digital transformations. And that can really help and really speed up the project. And maybe this is be an interesting maybe segue into kind of talking about implementations and best practices. One of the pushbacks we often have is, I need to show ROI. This is an upfront cost. I know it is because it's going to cost. I'm going to have to commit to some software spend and development spend. And I can't prove before I've done it the return on this investment. And that can be hard to do. It can be daunting. And there are a couple of ways to approach it. One, there are lots of case studies out there, and we at BigCommerce have lots that we can share where we show that ROI of a manufacturer moving online, and you can use those examples from within your in your specific manufacturing vertical to prove that. But two, it's about planning the right way, right? Plan to show that ROI really quickly. Often I find that manufacturers get put off when folks like myself and those in the room talk about these fantastic customer portals that do everything. Well, sometimes that can be daunting. But actually, if you bite off a little bit of that project, a little bit of that customer portal, first, we're just going to show orders and their status. That is step one. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to get that live in a couple of months. And I'll already start showing all the free time I've saved for my sales team. Well, once I've done that, the business is going to buy into this. And then I can move on to some of those more complex use cases that we've spoken about. And so that's kind of the way we like to approach and encourage manufacturers to get over some of those hurdles that are often we do find internally.
That's really good, Lance. I think it's so often perceived as a big sale, a big decision, a big change, but there's so much value in breaking it down and giving people the opportunity to adopt it one bite at a time, so that it doesn't shock their organization. It doesn't utilize, their full focus, because, as Delaney said, there's a lot of things calling for their attention, especially in the current climate. And so if they can start to adopt it, start to experience the benefits, and ultimately adopt that change over, years even, that becomes far more manageable for these organizations that are juggling so many things. I think those are wonderful points. So let's actually jump into, because one of the questions is, how do we get people to actually engage with the idea of adopting something like this? But now I want to talk about that implementation piece, because there's the other side of this is they've probably been through technology implementation processes that didn't go well, and that increases the perception of risk. It increases real risk related to it, and so how do you mitigate those risks? How do you create the highest chance for success in implementation? Not just that all of the ones and zeros are going in the right place, but that people are actually getting value out of it at the end of the day and adopting it. So maybe Tate, you want us to kick this on? I know you have all those early conversations with these B2B clients. So speak to that. What does that process look like? How do you set up a quality implementation?
Yeah, I think Lance made a great point, which is oftentimes what I see is that this concept of a portal is a large amount of possibility for any business. And so usually that conversation starts with understanding exactly what pain points it is that led them to a conversation with someone like me. If we're talking to them, then that means they're already aware that they need something like a portal. And likely that's due to some pain point that they're trying to solve, right? Nobody just wakes up randomly as a manufacturer and says, you know what, today's the day we're getting a buyer portal. Usually there's some catalyst for that conversation. And so that's usually where I like to start. What pain point led you here today? Usually that's the biggest pain point that they have in relation to a portal. And to Lance's point, that might just be, we want our customers to see orders. We want them to see status. That's a great first step. And putting that on the foundation of something like a portal allows you to grow from there and define those objectives clearly. Sometimes it's not orders. Sometimes it's just quotability. We want people to be able to get quotes quickly and go through an online process to do so. And so I typically will start with what are the initial pain points we're trying to solve, but then you have to move from there to what is the ultimate goal or objective of something like a buyer portal, with all the bells and whistles that you might possibly want for that particular business. And it is different for every business. And so it's important to know, where are we trying to end up with this implementation? Not just what are your bare minimum needs, but where would you actually like to see this go? Because that has profound implications to how that actually gets architected out, and the type of development that we do can either hinder or make that process of getting to those more long goals easier, or it can make it harder. And so that's something that you want to have clearly defined.
And I think a lot of times, again, going back to the perception of it being a big bite, a big, eat the whole elephant kind of thing. I think a lot of these B2B players would be surprised at how flexible that actually can be, how malleable it is to your journey into it. Let's talk about lowest hanging fruit, highest value first, and that it isn't necessarily some big unwieldy project. And I know that's something that I've seen in the sales process, that we end up surprising people. And we've had those conversations with the folks at BigCommerce, surprising people with how flexible and conforming it is to their organization, where they're at, the resources they can put into it.
That's right. The point of entry there is actually a lot easier than oftentimes I get in terms of expectations from businesses.
So you've as solutions architect, you've been in the kind of framing up process of how do we get things documented in such a way as to where they're implementable. I'm curious to hear from you, Jonathan, on once it's documented, which is such an important part of the process because it's about clarifying expectations, clarifying deliverables, and really thinking through what is actually going to create value here, not just be functional, but it also needs to be functional. And you still have a stake in making sure it actually creates the value it's supposed to create.
Absolutely.
Maybe speak to what's the experience from the from the merchant side, from the B2B player side, going through the implementation process.
Yeah, so this really can vary quite a bit. But one of the things that I think has is more true when implementing a B2B portal than, say, on the B2C side, where maybe things are a little more often are a lot more cookie cutter, is that this is often a multi-step process. So the launch that you might consider is a feature or a set of features, and then you will have another launch of features a year later, and then another one a year later. And because it's interesting, because I think the customers are a little stickier as part of it, and so you get some of that longer term benefit back as you reinvest in those same customers. So, improving interface design could be one aspect of it, but that might not be your first step. You might have something out there and people are like, yeah, it's old and clunky, but I can use it. I really want this feature. And so you get that feature rolled out. Yeah. And that oftentimes has a lot to do with, choosing the right platform and tools along the way, because this can be you may need 5 or 6 different tools in order, or even different platforms to accomplish different pieces, but you don't have to roll that all at once. And that's where the difference between the grand vision and what you can do today and what you'll have next year and the year after that can be very progressive if you're intentional to build out a roadmap from the beginning.
That's right.
And then if you take a very architecturally minded approach to this. And that's where partnering with somebody who understands how to build technical architecture from the beginning with an end in mind, and then how to build that in a way that's flexible to pivot along the way, is one of the things that I think is the most important when it comes to actual implementation. Is choose tools that are meant to scale with you, choose capabilities and integrations that will allow you to change your mind down the road. Because just as this is a 3-year process for what you might consider getting to some ultimate goal, you'll get 2 years into it and that goal may change. You may have an acquisition or a merger. You don't know what's going to happen in your business in that time period. And so knowing what you know, and then staying aware, partnering with your technology provider to make sure that they're aware of business changes that are taking place. Oh, you know what? We're going to pause because we're pausing on expenses, but we want to keep this piece going. Or so maybe we're not moving forward as quickly on these other things. Or you know what? We've got some major changes coming up. We're not sure what's going to happen over in this area. So let's choose to pivot and focus on these things that are the knowns. And you can continue to build that in such a way where you're increasing customer stickiness through the features that you're delivering by building a flexible system that is sustainable through the entire course and lifetime of this project. Because it really isn't a one and done. It's very much investing in your customers as they invest back in you, investing in your sales team, which gets further iterations of being able to be more efficient. All the benefits we were talking about before. But the great thing about this is if you build it from the ground up with an intentional mind toward, will this platform, based on what I can see, will it cover my needs 3 years from now? And reevaluating that at every implementation point, right? So you make it 2 years down the road, you're like, okay, this is what we picked 2 years ago. Will it still solve our problems 3 years from now? And if the answer is no, you pivot then. And so it really is this recurring cycle of, okay, we're going to do a phase, we're going to get a new feature set, we're going to roll this out, and we're going to see whether we get the ROI. We're going to see whether our customers are liking it or they're having issues with it, and then we're going to iterate again and pivot if necessary.
Well, I think it's interesting is actually one of the biggest challenges that I've seen and observed in the process of creating value and going through this an implementation is that our clients, the B2B folks, are asking for larger scopes. They want more. They want all these features, and part of our job is actually to kind of narrow it down to what makes sense to implement at first and then phase it out so that we can see. And what that does is it also allows the scientific process to take its course of, we're going to make a small number of changes, see if we create lift and value, then we'll make more changes so we can measure more effectively the discrete changes that we're making. But it also has the effect of accelerating the experience of the value by shipping faster, and two, spreading your costs out over a larger portion of time. And three, not jarring all of your users, both internal and external users, with huge changes all at once. So lots of reasons to phase it out. It's not us trying to get people to spend more money. We actually like seeing things phased out and seeing them adopted and implemented in bite-sized pieces, because that produces value more predictably with lower risk along the way. So hopefully that kind of language, because I know there's a lot of other implementation folks that don't approach things that way, but hopefully that language provides some comfort and addresses maybe some of the perceived risks on the implementation side of things. Well, I know we only have a few minutes left, as our producer is now letting me know. So maybe it'd be a good time to just move to a Q&A session. I know we were going to talk a little bit about some success stories and how things have been actually implemented. Maybe we can just link to some of that content after we close up here, but I want to make sure we preserve some time for Q&A. So with that said, we'll open it up for any Q&A, and maybe while we wait for questions to come in, we can maybe touch on a few of those things. So do we have, Greg, asking our producer, do we have any questions right now? Or, okay, just open up the lines and we'll jump right now to some of the ways we've actually seen it happen. So maybe let's talk about QA1. So reasonably well-known brand in the automotive space. What did that experience look like? What problems did they bring? And how did it go?
Yeah, so when we initially started talking to QA1, the buyer portal or a customer portal of some kind was one of the initial conversations that we had with them. We ended up essentially creating a whole website as well as a portal for QA1. But the highlight or the important thing that they came to us with was the need for a portal. We talked about this earlier, that identifying what those pain points are, why they're coming to us with that conversation is always important. For QA1, it was that their customers were demanding it, that they and convoluted ordering process for B2B, people that were trying to buy different components from QA1 had a very long lead time to actual purchase and fulfillment. And so that was the main pain point that we sought to solve. We did use BigCommerce's B2B edition, and so used the tools that are natively available in BigCommerce, which I would say accounted for 90+% of the problems that QA1 was looking to solve. And so with just some minor tweaks and customizations to that functionality, we were able to produce a process for them in that portal that really served their customers. And some of the key features that they were looking for there, one of them was just customer-specific pricing and quoting with that customer's account details, including that customer's shipping details. You know, a lot of their customers want to ship on their own account. And so all of those abilities were there in BigCommerce, as well as just the ability to manage those order lists and a history of your orders, and being able to do all of the ordering in one page instead of having to navigate through an entire website to get to that content. So, yeah, that was the main goal, and we were successful in that, as well as launching them with a new site. And to Jonathan's point, that's a continual iterative process, right? There's always going to be those checks to see, like, what are the effects of this implementation? How is it working? How isn't it working? Where do we need to pivot? And BigCommerce's platform offers that flexibility for us. So,
and how long? I'm just curious. Not maybe specifically QA1, but how long? What's the expectation for delivery time for a phase one project to complete that, deliver that, so they can?
Question. I think for the most part, when you're talking about like in BigCommerce, for example, a native B2B edition implementation, you're not talking about a very long amount of time to get that like initial phase one portion done. It can vary depending on the size and complexity of the business that you're working with, but I typically see something like 3 to 4 months of development, and that's from beginning to end to launching them on a native B2B edition.
And I think one other thing that's worth mentioning is that engaging with a platform like BigCommerce, you have more features than you're going to use on day one. And it's actually about selecting which ones you're going to configure and turn on day one. But again, gaining access to more value is oftentimes a matter of getting the data in, configuring it appropriately to your business, and turning it on what's already there.
That's right.
Instead of feeling like you need to add whole new chunks of things. So it's about finding the right starting point and then iterating from there. In a lot of cases, just turning on what's already existing in the platform. And it does sound like, from what I've heard from folks that went to Austin and visited with you guys at BigCommerce, there's a lot more that's really being focused on the B2B space to create a lot of value. We already feel great about the BigCommerce platform serving our B2B clients. And it sounds like there's a lot more good coming from you. So we'd love to be able to share that with the viewers. So Lance, if you'd make sure we have information about your roadmap and what's coming up, I would appreciate that, so we can share that. We'll also post links to the other success stories we didn't get to. And of course, you guys are welcome to read about those on classyllama.com. I would invite you guys, if you're watching this, it's something that you're looking at, even just kick the tires and consider, where does this fit into your current strategy, into your current field of view? Contact us. We're happy to provide guidance. We always want to create value no matter whether you work with us or not. So reach out to us. We'll have the conversation. And if you're evaluating BigCommerce, we'd love to help you do that. I think it's a really good marriage when you're talking to the implementation partner to have the conversation about the platform. I think that works out best. We would be happy to connect you with the folks at BigCommerce and navigate through that and think about, how do you engage best with that platform. We have a lot of processes and architectures that help to really get you the most value out of the platforms that you engage with. So we welcome that call. And Delaney, thank you so much for bringing this together. And I think it's such an important topic for the audience. And it's an amazing way for them to create more value for those that are buying from them, as well as for those that are in their organization, not least of which the salespeople that then are able to do more of what only they can do. So with that said, we'll close it up here. A lot of times we have more of an audience after just watching on the recording. So if you have questions, just comment on the video in whatever channel you're on, and we'll be happy to answer that. And of course, you can reach out directly to us as well. So Lance, Delaney, Tate, Jonathan, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. It's been a great time.
Thanks so much, Kurt. I really appreciate it, and appreciate all of the time that Classy Llama and BigCommerce have spent today to share all these insights. And for those of you who have joined us for the live event, we know how important your time is. So we thank you for sharing it with us today. And each of our organizations participating in this event today have a vast array of resources available to support Michigan manufacturers. So be sure to check out our websites, classyllama.com, bigcommerce.com, and mimfg.org. While you're at MMA's website, make sure you check out our Manufacturing Excellence Awards Hub. The second round of our Coolest Thing Made in Michigan's People's Choice Awards begins on Monday. So you can find that at mimfg.org or mycoolestthing.org. Cast your vote. So once again, thanks everyone. Have a great day.